Our Mental Health Monday feature today is Dr. Pooja Lakshmin, a board-certified psychiatrist and clinical professor at the George Washington University School of Medicine. Dr. Pooja is the author of the book Real Self-Care, and she's here to talk about her outlook on science-backed solutions to self-care. She is a very interesting person. We're so thrilled to have her on the show. Pooja, good morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosie.
Let's talk, Pooja, about your background. How did you get into clinical psychiatry, and how did you find yourself in the self-care space?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I was a women's studies major. I found myself always interested in sort of the plight of being a woman and the struggles that women were going through. So when I got to medical school, I thought that I would become an OBGYN. I thought I was going to deliver babies. And then I was in my first delivery, helping deliver baby. I'm like, I don't think this is for me. I wanted to be in an office, talking with patients, and really getting to understand what was going on in sort of the more private spaces of their lives, not just about their symptoms, but actually understanding how they were feeling. And then that's how I came to becoming a psychiatrist, specializing in women's mental health, and then kind of slowly coming to this self-care thing.
Absolutely. And I want to say, even more than women's mental health, there's a very specific set of people that you also can help, and it comes with those who have just had babies.
Yes, so my clinical practice is focused on what's called perinatal psychiatry. So I take care of women who are struggling with things like postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, and also women who maybe have had depression or anxiety in the past and are thinking about, hey, I want to have a baby, I am pregnant, but I don't know what to do. Should I stay on my medication? Should I go off? So it really is this incredibly special period of time. It's a vulnerable period of time, but it's also a time where women are really motivated to get help.
Sure.
And they get better. Yeah. They get better. And so that is the really nice thing for me, too.
Absolutely. Rewarding for you to be able to see. You've kind of put pen to paper with talking about your expertise. You came out with this book called Real Self-Care, Crystals, Cleanses, and Bubble Baths Not Included, which I love as a title. Talk to me about, putting together this book, why you wanted to write it.
Yeah. So it kind of really, one of the things that sparked it is that when I started practicing in 2016, I started to notice patients come in and they were like, Dr. Lakshmin, I'm stressed out, I'm burnt out, I'm not eating well, I'm not sleeping well. And I feel like it's my fault because I have the meditation app on my phone. I know I'm supposed to be using it. But the last thing that I want to do at the end of the day, after I finish working and put the kids to bed and all the things, is like, I can't meditate. I'm like sitting on the couch like a zombie watching Real Housewives.
Yep.
And I wanted to say, and I did say to my patients, like, this isn't your fault. Like, we live in a society that places the burden of responsibility of child rearing, of family management on women and on moms. And we know the research shows us that if you are in a relationship or a family where you are bearing the majority of the mental load, you are going to feel burnt out. You are going to have a hard time connecting with meaning. You are going to, like I say to my patients, you feel like you're managing your family as opposed to actually being part of your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it doesn't stop, right? There's no clucking out once you become a parent, that sort of thing. So I want to ask you, what is your definition? What is real self-care?
Yes. So I break it into two categories. So there's faux self-care, which is the consumer-oriented, kind of commodified wellness strategies. You could say maybe like the juice cleanse or the bubble bath or the massage. There's not anything wrong with those things. I mean, we're here in Austin. I know people really like their kombucha. Like, it's not.
And yoga. People are into yoga.
Yes. It's not that is bad. It's that those things are, let's say, a tool or a method. But what we really need is the internal principles. And that is real self-care. And there's 4 principles: boundaries, compassion, values, and power. And I know this sounds a little bit heady, so I'll give another example. You can probably relate to being at a yoga class, right? And spending the whole time in your head, beating yourself up. Like, the person next to you can do a handstand. You can even do crow pose. You're not wearing the right Lululemon leggings, right? You've checked yoga off the list, but you haven't actually taken in the medicine, the real nourishment of yoga. So what I like to say is that it's actually less about the thing and it's more about the internal process, the boundaries, the compassion, the values, the agency that you are doing on the inside that actually allows you to receive the benefit of self-care on the outside.
Well, I'd like to ask then how you approach some of these pillars with your clients. When you say boundaries, I go weak need, because I know we as women so often have been raised or have been put in a situation where we want to be people pleasing. And so having boundaries for yourself can really be a difficult journey. Talk to me about how you approach self-care with your clients.
Yes. So, there's a reason that boundaries are the first principle, because they are the most
Right,
difficult.
exactly.
So you're not the only one that
Thank
feels
you.
that way, Rosie. And I will say with my patients, people are just like, oh God, they're angry at me that I want to talk about boundaries. But the thing is that a boundary isn't always saying no. I think of boundaries as the pause. So somebody asks you for something, you get an email that comes in, your boss makes a request. You don't have to say no. It's you pause, and then you always have three choices: yes, no, or negotiate. Because the truth is that no always does come with a cost. Like, you might lose out on that next promotion. You might have a family member that is upset with you, right? But with the pause, that's always accessible. And then if you feel like if you do that mental calculus and you're like, no, you know what, I can't take the risk right now to actually say no, then you make a mental note for yourself and you say, okay, what do I need to do so that 6 months from now, it's a little bit easier for me to say no to, let's say, my sister who's asking me for something, or that friend who is really frustrating and is texting me all the time, but I don't have time to help them, right? So you're able to kind of think a little bit more strategically, as opposed to then beating yourself up and saying that you're not always able to say no. The other thing with boundaries is, and you mentioned this, Rosie, the guilt.
Guilt, big time.
And I like to say to my patients that, like we were discussing earlier, we live in a society and a culture that puts so much burden on women and mothers in particular. And the guilt actually comes from the outside. A lot of times my patients, no matter what decision they make, they'll say they feel guilty. They're letting someone down. They choose something in service of their career. They feel like they're letting their kids down. They choose something in service of their kids, and then they feel like they're being a bad employee. It doesn't make sense. You can't actually win. So I like to...
You can't please everybody all the time.
You can't please everyone all the time. The game is rigged. So I tell my patients, it's not about avoiding guilt. You can't use guilt as your moral compass. Instead, think of a volume dial where you're turning the volume down on the guilt. It's always going to be there because it's coming from the outside, right? So it's always going to be there. It doesn't need to control you. And it's a muscle. It's a muscle that you practice.
Okay. Yeah, maybe start today.
Yes.
Working on that dial button.
Yes.
I want to make sure that we'd be remiss, not to ask about where we can hear from you, because you're such a wonderful speaker. The Texas Conference for Women is right around the corner. Can you just tell me real quickly about what you're going to be doing there?
Yes. So the Texas Conference for Women is this Wednesday. It's actually sold out. There's almost 8,000 women coming for this conference.
Which is amazing.
Amazing. It's been going on for 25 years. I'm going to be there doing 2 workshops on real self-care. The national conference is on March 5th of next year. And
I think that one's a virtual one,
that's
right?
a virtual one. I'll be speaking there as well. The lineups are amazing. And the whole thing is about unity. And unity in our relationships. And one of the things that I like to talk about with real self-care is really this is all about building those relationships, finding the time to actually build meaningful connection, build authentic connection. Again, it's not just a juice cleanse or a yoga class. It's really about those relationships and the communities that you're in. And this conference that's been going on for 25 years, that's where people build their relationships. That's where women all over Texas come in and they make friendships and professional relationships that last a lifetime.
I think that's wonderful. And may I say, doctor, as a psychiatrist, it's really wonderful to have somebody meeting us where we are. I think it's incredible what you do, and thank you so much for your time. Hopefully we'll catch you at one of these women's conferences soon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Rosie.
Learn more about Dr. Pooja and her new book, Real Self-Care. By the way, she's got another one coming out in the next couple of years, so something to stay tuned for by going to poojalakshmin.com.